drove my old hatchback up a twisting single-track road, headlights cutting through low-hung fog. The air tasted of damp heather and peat smoke. At the top, the stone lodge loomed against dark hills. No street lamps, no neighbors, just my own breath misting in the chill. I hauled my bag inside, struck a match to the peat fire, and let its smoky warmth settle my bones. Outside, wind groaned through the pines. I was the first to arrive, and for a moment that felt perfect.
Dawn came pale and silent. I poured black coffee into my thermos, the mug still warm against my gloved palm. Through the narrow window, I watched frost rim every blade of grass. With each sip, I felt restless, like the woods were holding their breath. I slipped on my boots and stepped outside. The door swung shut behind me, leaving only a thin line of gray sky above the ridges.
The trail wound through bracken and moss, a 2-mile loop I'd walked years ago with my sister. Now it was deserted, the ground sheathed in a crunchy frost. I paused when I spotted footprints, deep boot treads leading down the path. Not deer, not fox, human prints, fresh as if someone had just come through. I scanned the trees. Nothing moved. I shook it off, certain it was a hunter or a fellow hiker. Still, I pressed on, eyes flicking to every shadow.
When I rounded the last bend, I saw more prints heading straight to the lodge door. They stopped at the threshold. I swallowed hard. No lock on that door. Whoever had been out here could have slipped right in while I was gone. A sudden breeze rattled the lock plate. I ducked inside and slammed the door, heart hammering. For a moment, I imagined faded prints smudging out, leaving no trace.
I dialed my mom on the shaky line. She sounded stiff, insisting I find a room in the village down the glen. Dad offered to reroute and pick me up before nightfall, but I hated the idea of crawling back through that fog alone. I told them I'd be fine, that it was probably nothing. I draped a wool blanket over my legs and tried to focus on the fire's warmth. But even the crackle felt menacing. I stayed by the hearth all afternoon, coffee cups piling up on the side table. I stared into the dancing flames, imagining movement just beyond the circle of light. Each time the wind rattled the window panes, I flinched. The lodge smelled of damp wood, burning moss, and old fabric. I pressed my nose against the sleeve of my sweater, desperate to anchor myself in something familiar. But every pop from the fire sounded like a footstep.
As twilight bled into night, I grew frantic to know if the prince had vanished. I stood, draped a scarf over my shoulders, and opened the door. The lodge felt dark behind me, lit only by embers. Outside, the forest was an endless wall of black. I crouched to find the prints once more, but the snow had melted into slush, hiding any tracks. Cold dread settled in my gut. If they'd come this close, where had they gone?
I closed the door and leaned against its weight, breathing hard. A dry rustle came from inside the lodge, like paper scraping stone. I snapped around. Nothing but the empty hall. My chest tightened. I realized I'd left the back door unlatched, but I was too scared to check. Every corridor looked the same in the half-light. The fire was nearly out, its glow swimming on the walls. Then I heard it, a soft, deliberate scuff moving toward me. I pressed my back flat against the wall, listening to the boards creak under slow weight. The shape appeared at the end of the hallway, crouched low, sliding forward. My fingers fumbled for the keys on the hook by the door. I bolted for the hatchback under the porch, throwing open the door as that thing lunged. I floored it down the track, hearing a final scrape on the gravel behind me.
Police found only faint scratch marks inside the lodge and a hastily abandoned wool cap in the stairwell. They said a transient might have hidden in the closet all day, but that didn't explain the prints leading straight to the front door, or the sound of crawling feet at night. Now, I can't sleep without checking every lock. I still dream of that dark corridor, and wonder who or what spun around when I ran. Will you keep your eyes peeled long enough to see who's really waiting in the dark?